Sonic Adventure 2 is a game that needs little to no introduction. Being a sequel to the, at the time, critically acclaimed Sonic Adventure, Adventure 2 was released as a title to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the series in 2001. As I described last time, the Sega Saturn era was a really rough time for Sega, so they had a lot riding on the first Adventure title because if they weren't able to finally bring their mascot into 3D, then they were fucked. Even after the success of that game, they were still getting massacred by the PS2 and were overall losing the console war, so in 2001 they had to leave the console market, and they went out with a bang in the form of Sonic Adventure 2, which would leave quite an impact on the series. It marked a big point in Sonic's history as this game was celebrated as a 10th anniversary of the series. I know, it's hard to think of a time where they didn't do this for every damn Sonic game. This is the game that the series had been building up to at this point, because it was the culmination of all games prior to this one. This game represents the end of the era in which Sega was a console manufacturer because the Dreamcast was discontinued after this game hit store shelves. However, it also marked the beginning of another. Yeah, this is the part where I blow your mind and say Sonic debuted on a Nintendo console with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which would introduce a plethora of new people to the series. Around this point in time, a lot of new fans are brought in with SA2, the Mega Collection, SADX, and the Advanced series. I think that may be why this is one of the most iconic Sonic games next to Sonic 1 and 2. It could have been Sonic's last outing, and if that was the case, then they would have gone out with a great swan song. SA2's reception nowadays is a little more positive than the first game's reputation, but this game is definitely another divisive one. It still remains a very popular pick as someone's favorite game in this series, but there are still a lot of fans who think this one also aged poorly and suffers from similar issues to the first game, like the attempt at having multiple gameplay styles or the story being dumb. I mean, the real debate is whether or not it's even aged, rather than SA1 where most people can acknowledge the fact that it's aged, but argue on how much that detracts from the quality nowadays. I'll just acknowledge this now. I have a lot of nostalgia for Sonic Adventure 2, and to fully explain this, I'll have to go over my history with the series. When I was first brought into the series around the age of 4 or 5, I would mainly just stick to the classic games and a few spin-offs like Sonic Rush or some of the racing games. I didn't play a lot of mainline 3D titles until I got an Xbox 360 at the age of 7, where I was exposed to 3D games like Adventure 1, Unleashed, Generations, and of course Adventure 2. With the exception of Sonic CD, I would rarely get far in Sonic games. Like, I'm talking not being able to beat the second level in most of these games, but when I played Adventure 2 as a kid, I beat the second level, specifically the Bigfoot boss. No joke, I used to struggle with this boss when I was 7, and that fact haunts me to this day. I played Adventure 2 so much I got all the way to the last story, however I never beat the game fully. Since this was one of those games that I actually stuck with, it became one of my favorite childhood games. I have lots of fond memories of being in 2nd grade and coming home from school to play more SA2. I would replay the Sonic and Shadow levels, advance in the story, play multiplayer with my friends, or mess around in the Chow Garden while having no idea how any of it worked. Everything about this game was so awesome to me back then, from the gameplay to the story to the music, and it's still awesome to me now. As I've illustrated very well, Sonic Adventure 2 left a huge impact on me as a kid, as it did for the entire Sonic franchise. This is really one of my favorite childhood games, and to tell you the truth, this is one of my favorite Sonic games, if not my favorite. I know in my Sonic 3 review I said it was like my absolute favorite, but I think that was because it had been a while since I did a full playthrough. Overall, they are very close, but I think Sonic Adventure 2 beats out Sonic 3 by a little bit. It could be because of nostalgia, but I still think that this game is amazing. So let's waste no more time and jump right in to try and discover what makes Sonic Adventure 2 my favorite in this series. Let's start by discussing the changes made to the structure as we did with the first game. Overall, Sonic Adventure 2 feels more streamlined because of how they cut some of the fat featured in the first game. The main tweak to the formula was the removal of hub worlds. Most people praise this as the second coming of Christ, and while I did think that SA1 made the hub world work well, I'd be lying if I said they were completely necessary. I still think stage-to-stage action works better. And I mean, the story asks for much more urgency, so hub worlds wouldn't really work. You can't go chill in Station Square and talk to NPCs after Eggman goes and pisses on the moon, you know? We do get this cool world map to connect all the events together though. Another big change is the number of campaigns and gameplay styles. As we all know, Sonic Adventure 1 came with a whopping 6 different gameplay styles, 5 of which were actually good. some more than others. Sonic Adventure 2 takes the 3 best gameplay styles from that game, Sonic's action platforming, Knuckles' treasure hunting, and Gamma's mech shooters, and made those the core gameplay styles. However, the number of campaigns has been cut down to only 2, with a short final story to conclude the narrative. The 2 stories we have here reflect both sides of the main conflict, the hero side and the dark side. Each team has their own character to represent one of the gameplay styles. Sonic and Shadow have fast platforming levels, Tails and Eggman have mech shooting levels, and Knuckles and Rouge have hunting levels. In the end, I do prefer SA2's more straightforward structure, but I will admit both sides have their own merits. In SA1, you can explore the hub world and hang out with NPCs that sometimes have interesting things to say, and you can also play as any character you want without being interrupted. In that game, I can choose Sonic and play all of his levels back to back, but in SA2, I might play a Sonic level and then get booted to a Knuckles level. I think this is why people complain about the different gameplay styles more in SA2, since those simpletons can get away with just playing one gameplay style in the first game without having to play with Sonic's stupid friends. I don't really mind this because I think all 3 styles are really enjoyable, but I don't want to blow my load too early. Another very important tweak to the structure is the fact that levels are no longer shared between characters. There's a total of 30 levels that are completely designed around their respective gameplay styles. Honestly, I think this was the main thing that held back the gameplay styles of SA1. Knuckles' stages were too small, Tails' levels are just not designed for his controls at all, and Gamma's were too short since he'd usually just be playing segments of Sonic's levels. Now the level design can be much more focused, so thank God. Also, in SA1, it was very obvious the devs favored Sonic's story because, well, who didn't? His playthrough is easily the longest, and he ran through 10 of the 11 stages that game had to offer. Now, every type of gameplay shares a third of the game's total levels. Well, okay, Tails and Rouge each have these driving levels that I guess you could say don't count, but that's beside the point. In SA1, I really just feel like they didn't care much about polishing the other gameplay styles. Yeah, I think most of them were fun, but I can say that besides Sonic, none of them reached their fullest potential. Now in SA2, much more focus has been placed on these other types of gameplay, for better or for worse. I mean, if you're one of those retards who say these don't belong in a Sonic game, then you're in for a bad time, since you can't just play Sonic levels. Also, the structure of this video is obviously going to be pretty different than how I had things last time, because I can't talk about a character's individual narrative and gameplay style, so I'll be discussing gameplay and story separately. And on that note, we'll talk about the star of all the gameplay styles, the fast platforming levels featuring Sonic and Shadow. In SA1, it was without a doubt the highlight of that game because it did an amazing job at translating the core mechanics into 3D, and it is very obvious that they put the most effort into making Sonic's campaign. With SA2, it makes some tweaks to the control and the focus of the level design to give you a really good but different experience in a few ways. It's less of a direct translation than the first adventure game, but I don't mean that in a negative way. We can begin with the control, since that is essentially the foundation of everything. Overall, its control is pretty good. Honestly, I don't think it reaches the heights of how he handled in SA1. It just felt a little better in that game. Either way, he still feels pretty smooth. The only times that control can cause issues are some of those instances where you have to jump off of walls in Pyramid Cave. It just feels unpredictable and wonky. His moveset from SA1 returns with the homing attack, spin dash, and light speed dash. However, they have some tweaks to make them feel different, except for the homing attack. It functions exactly as it did in SA1, therefore it is as great as it is in SA1. Not only does the spin dash feel kinda weaker, but you can't charge it up as suddenly as you could in SA1, since to even activate it, you must hold the action button and start charging. The windup is pretty short, but I still would have rathered it to be as fast as the spin dash last time, but overall it is still fun to use for occasional shortcuts. The light speed dash has definitely been improved, because they fixed the main reason I didn't like it that much, the windup. You can run up to a trail of rings and just dash right through them, which is how it should have been designed in the first place, and it makes blazing through trails of rings quick and fun. That's assuming it works when you walk up to a line of rings. That brings us to the handful of new abilities Sonic has, as well as the pros and cons they bring because of their problematic button mapping. The first new move is the somersault, which isn't all too great. You activate it by tapping the action button, and it just lets you curl up into a ball to somersault underneath some obstacles. Similar to Amy's hammer from SA1, it cancels all of your momentum, so it isn't very satisfying to use. We already have a move to curl up into a ball to roll, so why do we even need the somersault? It's not really used in any creative ways to justify having this rather than the spin dash, which produces a similar and better effect. Heck, Tails and Knuckles were able to curl into a ball at high speeds in SA1, why couldn't Sonic just have that for a somersault-like move? Also, the somersault shares the same button as the light speed dash. The game detects whether or not the light dash is applicable, so you can only use it if you're actually around rings, but if it fails to notice them, which is more common than I'd like to admit, then you'll be rewarded with an unsatisfying somersault that halts all of your momentum. I'd rather do an entire playthrough of Sonic Forces than fail to light dash. I mean, when rings are in front of a ball, bottomless pit, then it usually works. But if there's an optional trail of rings where you could possibly dash through them, then that's when it becomes finicky. Sorry, I like doing it to get through levels faster, I can't help myself. Another new ability introduced is the bounce bracelet, which I actually like a lot. When airborne, you can press, you guessed it, the action button to slam right down onto the ground and bounce back up. You get it like halfway through the game, but I still think it's a fun method to achieve good vertical momentum, especially for stuff like grind rails, since you can instantly bounce onto it with a load of momentum. That's one of the main components that makes levels like Final Rush so fun, since the bounce bracelet can let you achieve a great sense of flow throughout the stage, or make you fall to your death. Unfortunately, Shadow never picked up this upgrade, so only Sonic gets to use it. Some other weird abilities include the Mystic Melody, which every character has exclusively for the Lost Chow missions, which I'll get into later, and the Magic Hands, which turns enemies into toys. But okay, Sonic has the Somersault, Light Dash, Bounce Bracelet, and Spin Dash all mapped to the same button. When considering how the camera usually snaps back after moving, so you don't really need the camera controls, that means Sonic Adventure 2 is playable on a fucking NES controller. Congratulations, Sonic team, what an accessible game you have made. Overall, I do think some of the new moves are cool because I love gaining momentum with the bounce bracelet, and chaining light dashes can be super satisfying, but what isn't satisfying is when this game's case of same button syndrome gets in your way. You might do a momentum killing somersault or bounce out onto the ground when trying to do a light dash, and this could have easily been solved by taking a look at the thing you hold to control the video game, for fuck's sake. Video game controllers have had more than 2 face buttons for 10 years at the point of SA2's release. Okay, I might be acting a bit too harsh here. It's an occasional problem that I would love to see get fixed in one of this game's mini ports, but it definitely doesn't ruin Sonic's gameplay. I mean, without the bounce bracelet, Shadow suffers from it less. Also, putting this out there now, I think Sonic's levels are better than Shadow's. I don't know why, I just lean towards replaying his more often. I've complained quite a bit, but keep in mind that I still love the action platforming stages, so let's talk about a new mechanic that I love, rail grinding. Basically, for this game specifically, Sonic must have gone to the GTA shoe store because he has some new footwear, the 2G high-speed shoes. I mean the soap shoes. It's quite interesting how these are based on real-life shoes invented in 1997 that were designed for grinding on things like stone ledges, pipes, and most notably handrails. Sonic has these equipped due to a promotion, so you can now grind on rails. You attach yourself to the rail by simply jumping on it, and you can grind on them to build momentum to slide through levels fast. You can hold down the action button to crouch and go faster too. You'd think that you would have to balance yourself on these at super fast speeds, but frankly you'll never fall off, unless you try doing something like switching rails. For some reason, if you try to jump onto a different rail, there's a pretty high chance you'll eat shit and end up in a bottomless pit 9 times out of 10, since that's where rail grinding usually is. Sometimes just jumping off can result in a smooth, regular jump, or you'll careen right off and fucking die. I think the result may relate to how fast you're going, since at leisurely paces I can usually switch rails with relative ease. You're never placed in do or die situations where you have to jump off, but there are plenty of times where you'll want to jump off to get to a shortcut or a golden beetle. I mean, this game was rushed, so I guess they knew about this and weren't too demanding with it, so it isn't a big issue. However, I can't just not acknowledge how unpredictable and unpolished it can be at times. But I still think rail grinding is a ton of fun. It provides great spectacle and a great sense of speed that can be really fun to play with in levels like Sky Rail or Final Rush. Now let's take a look at the level design of these stages. Coming off of the heels of SA1's great level design, SA2 definitely has some shoes to fill, so how does it compare? Well, both games have their differences in level design, but yeah, I'd say it's really good this time. SA1 opted for more of a direct translation of the 2D gameplay with a few new mechanics like the homing attack. This makes a ton of sense with it being his first 3D adventure, and I think most of the fun in the level design came from trying to use Sonic's moveset to explore and break the level design to get better records. SA2 makes things pretty clear with how it handles level design as early as Sonic's first level, City Escape. For most of it, you're just running through the level in a mostly straight line. However, that is a very surface level observation because there's a ton to do here. That makes this one of the most replayable Sonic levels in this game. Basically, Sonic and Shadow's levels are focused on stylish action that adds lots of replay value to these. For example, City Escape features ramps you can do tricks off of by jumping at just the right time, and these reward you with points. The main challenge is trying to get more points by nailing all the other tricks to build more momentum, and on top of that, newcomers may struggle with the timing like I did as a kid. It also has things you can look out for, like this light dash trail to save time and get more points, or the blink and you'll miss it golden beetle, which is essential for those those looking to get A ranks. To give another example, Pyramid Cave is also on the linear side, but these hallway segments feature hoops you could jump through to earn points, which incentivize you to memorize the layout and get good with this control so you can jump through as many hoops as possible without butchering your flow. This level also features challenges where you're against the clock with doors that slowly close or times where you have to grab an item to open a door, so you'll want to master the level design to get it as fast as possible. Frankly, I think Pyramid Cave is an underrated level. I don't know what people hate so much. Radical Highway has some multi-layered parts where the higher paths reward you with faster but more challenging routes that let you access the Golden Beetle and the ability to grind down the Golden Gate Bridge. That's awesome, bro. There are some levels that are more open-ended too, like Final Rush and Final Chase, and I really like these levels. Yes, even Final Chase. Just don't panic too much on these gravity drums because most of the time they get the job done and don't crap out like you may expect. It was challenging to master, but I found it greatly rewarding. These action platforming levels are not only densely packed with rewarding action, but are also exploding with set pieces to make for even more action. Metal Harbor has Sonic hitching a ride on a rocket after it explodes, but you're actually running against the clock, and there is an extra route that's harder to get but rewards you with much more points and is the ideal way of achieving the A rank. Also, it's not that hard. I don't know why people complain so much, but I do hate running right into a wall and eating shit during this part. For White Jungle and Green Forest, the entire level is basically the set piece because you're escaping from an island that's about to explode as you get to do stylish things like running through the classic loops or swinging on lots of vines. And of course, City Escape features you outrunning an entire gun truck that has no concern for pedestrian safety. SA1 improved on Sonic 3's set pieces by making most of them playable, and SA2 improves on this even more by having them be more involved and demand more out of the player's skill. And these moments with set pieces are usually very useful at contributing to your score, such as the hoops of Pyramid Cave or the rocket launch in Metal Harbor. All the levels here have a lot of variety in their set pieces, and I think most of them are pretty good. However, not all of them are perfect. I really appreciate the ideas that Pyramid Cave brings to the table, and overall I think it is a great level, but it definitely could be even better if Sonic's handling wasn't so funky when running on walls, which you will have to do to run through certain hoops to get points. And I know this is oddly specific, but Sonic snaps into a straight line whenever you get near this light dash trail, and it makes dashing through it actually really hard for the completely wrong reasons, and I don't like it. This very specific collision issue actually seems to be exclusive to the Steam port. Final Chase is often pointed to as a janky level with these gravity drums, but they really aren't that hard to control. I think homing attacking onto it can cause some issues since you get knocked back a little, but getting comfortable with the control isn't that challenging. I wish you could spin dash on top of the cylinders because I planned out some sick ass skips via spin dash jumps, but I was bummed out to figure you just cannot perform it here. People also like to call Skyrail a janky mess, but that's only because switching rails isn't all too smooth since you're always grinding at very high speeds. I think this one is a really fun level with some branching shortcuts and high octane but fun gameplay. Although the Golden Beetle really isn't a dickish location, you may have noticed that I've been throwing around the word score a lot. It's because all the stylish tricks you have to master at each level all add to your score, but what makes score so valuable in SA2 when compared to the other games?
That was cool!
That's what, the new ranking system. For the first time in the series, Sonic Adventure 2 takes your score at the end of a level and gives you a rank based on that, ranging from A to E. At first, you may think you just want to get a fast time in order to achieve an A rank, but this could not be further from the truth. As I have illustrated earlier, mastering stages requires you to nail all the action set pieces that are featured within the level, on top of having a very clean performance and a fast time. The levels feature lots of tricks you can pull off, and the game rewards you by saying stuff like nice, cool, radical. It makes me feel good about myself. The ranking system really ties all these stages together since it's a great way to positively reinforce one of the core elements of level design in Sonic games, which is replayability. Even on their first attempt, I believe Adventure 2 features the best ranking system in any Sonic game. I mean, I obviously haven't played all of them that utilize rankings, which is a lot of them, but I doubt any other games would top them due to how excellent this game's level design is, and I don't think my all-time favorite is going to be changing anytime soon. Some A ranks are very hard to achieve, like Green Forest for example, but others can take a while, like Final Rush, because you really have to master the rail grinding mechanics to make it through with an A rank. And since basically that entire level is suspended over a bottomless pit, it makes trying to take risks and find shortcuts pretty risky, and most of the time I just can't help myself. These A ranks really don't fuck around, and that encourages a lot of replay value. Overall, I believe Sonic and Shadow's fast-paced action platforming stages are the highlight of SA2 and without a doubt the best gameplay style. They feature fast, great, and very rewarding rewarding level design, varied and enjoyable gimmicks and set pieces, a nice and fun moveset to play around with, and a great ranking system to tie it all together, and encourage you to play them over and over again to perfect each level, which is when these levels are at their most enjoyable. When it comes to the critics, the only things they focus on are their minor issues with the control and the more linear level design. While the former can be an issue, mainly when Sonic Team place tested this game with a fucking NES controller, linearity is not inherently bad, and in my opinion, SA2 utilizes linear design extremely well. I think some people just look at these on a surface level. By comparison, yeah, SA2 is much more linear than SA1 because you don't get nearly as much room to experiment with spin dash jumps to find shortcuts throughout the very open level design, but overall I still slightly prefer Adventure 2's fast platforming levels. I think it may be down to consistency. In the first game, I frankly only replay a handful of stages very often, like Red Mountain, Emerald Coast, and Speed Highway to name a few. Most of the levels in SA1 are still solid, but in SA2 I don't have to deal with things like the boring ass Casinopolis. I can really find a lot of fun in playing and replaying all 10 of these action platforming levels, and that's with its more linear design philosophy. Never have we seen a more fun, stylish, and replayable set of stages in Sonic's history than Sonic and Shadow's set of levels in Sonic Adventure 2. These are simply amazing. Moving on, we have Tails and Eggman's mech shooting stages, originally inherited by E102 Gamma in Sonic Adventure 1. However, yeah, he died. Right off the bat, I'd like to talk about one of the most common criticisms of this gameplay, which actually has nothing to do with the gameplay, and that's the fact that Tails isn't a mech even though he had his own type of gameplay in SA1. Well, first of all, if you watched my feature-length SA1 review, then you'd know that I didn't think much of Tails' gameplay, so I don't really mind him taking over Gamma's shooter stages because I already thought Gamma was more fun to play. The main reason this actually happened is that Tails wasn't going to be playable at first. It was just going to be Sonic, Knuckles, and Eggman. Then, Sonic fans did what they do best and started complaining, so he was thrown in there along with Rouge and Shadow, so each character had a playable counterpart. I mean, Eggman using a mech makes a lot of sense, but people think Tails in a mech is just completely asinine, and I'd have to disagree actually. In Prison Lane, yeah, of course he'd use a mech, he's breaking into Alcatraz basically. People always say, well, why doesn't he transform into a plane on Mission Street where he has to avoid military pursuit? That's because the entire gun air force is trying to bomb Tails. Okay, let's discuss how it actually plays. Firstly, their movesets remain very similar to that of Gamma's, including the hovering upgrade that I love, but I wish the mechs just started with it. It makes platforming and combat much more fun, and you still unlock the upgrades early in both campaigns. They get a few more upgrades, such as the one that increases the power of your shots and the health of the mech. Oh yeah, there is one of the few tweaks SA2 made to the mech shooting formula. Instead of operating on the traditional ring insurance system, Eggman and Tails have proper health bars that allow you to take a few hits before dying. Your health can be refilled by collecting rings and fighting health monitors. I think this is an improvement because these stages feel much more involved than Gamma's, so I believe it was actually a necessity to add this. Gamma's 3 stages never really suffered from the lack of a health bar, since picking up rings is really easy, but this just feels much better. Your objective still remains about the same. You gotta make it through the stage by platforming and locking onto lots of enemies while avoiding enemy gunfire, so your combos can be rewarded with large point bonuses. But you actually don't get more seconds on your clock from defeating enemies anymore. The ticking timer has been replaced with a traditional timer. This seems weird at first because that was your main incentive to lock onto enemies and rack up combos, but you have a new incentive to want to do that, the ranking system. Yeah, every character has these, not just Sonic. Both methods have their merits, but overall I do prefer how SA2 does things. SA1 created more tension in the levels, at least on paper, because the level design rarely utilized it well, but the ranking system is still a great way to incentivize not only high combos but fast completion times, since you gotta have a lot of both to get the glorious A rank. Although getting A ranks on these feels much easier than mastering the speed stages, but you still have to put in a good amount of effort. Also, another issue some have with the shooter levels is the fact that you turn slower than in SA1. This is literally one thing people always complain about in this game, and I've never understood why. I can't think of a single time where turning slower than Gamma became a problem. I mean, yeah, I never said, man, I wish I turned slower when I played as Gamma, but this never creates any issues too. I'm guessing it was done to help with precise aiming when turning, so in that regard, I guess it helps. I'm kinda indifferent to this, but it's not something I would call a flaw. If you want to turn smoothly, then just start hovering. You'd want to do that anyway because because it's a great maneuver for dodging projectiles during enemy encounters. Also, I'd actually recommend mapping your action button to L1 for these stages, because I think it made locking on and releasing much more comfortable, because every now and then I get thrown off if I have to jump a lot when shooting since the buttons are so close. I think the level design is also a definite step up from the mech shooting levels of Adventure 1. Yeah, those levels are fun, but 2 out of the 3 levels are super short and are basically just segments of Sonic's levels with a bunch of enemies to lock onto and a few platforms here and there. As much as I liked those stages, I can definitely say they were not close to reaching their fullest potential. And now that the layouts of the stages are specifically designed for mech gameplay, they just feel much better to play. They are a lot longer and generally feel more involved. They demand much more platforming out of you, which usually isn't very hard with the hover ability, but I still think it makes platforming more fun. Enemies are harder to deal with than in Gamma's campaign, and there's more variety too, so the game keeps things varied. But I can't lie, some of these stages do suffer from poor enemy placement, which I feel the most in Mission Street, Tails' second level. Enemies just drop down out of nowhere in what feels like every 20 seconds. The music makes it seem like it's gonna be a relaxing level, but you end up getting butt fucked by gun robots and literal planes that bomb you. It feels annoying and cheap. Eternal Engine also has these artificial chaos enemies that can seriously go fuck themselves. Once you get close, they pop their arms out right at you and it can feel rather cheap sometimes. They can also be a problem in some other levels like Sonic's Crazy Gadget, mainly due to their placement, but in other levels like Shadow's Final Chase or Eggman's Cosmic Wall, I don't really think they're an issue. They're mainly problematic based on their placement. Eternal Engine can also get pretty tense during combat, and aside from those instances with artificial chaos, it feels well balanced, so I think it is a fun level. I also like how you can shoot these doors to get more points, but they can suck you into the vacuum of space. It's a cool risk-reward element in the stage. But Mission Street is one of the weakest levels in the entire game if I'm being frank. Adventure 2 also brings much more stage variety to the table when compared to Gamma's levels. A lot of them feature something memorable, like the dopamine rush of Weapons Bed where you get to lock onto a bunch of static gun robots, or the low gravity of Cosmic Wall which lets you jump high and hover for a long time. Most people agree that this is the best mech level, and I agree, it's great fun. I will admit it could have been a little shorter, but I always leave the stage very satisfied. Altogether, yeah, I think the mech shooting stages are really fun to play. I don't boot these up nearly as much as I do for Sonic and Shadows levels, but I still enjoy replaying them thanks to the mechanics that are solid. Skillfully locking onto lots of enemies to rack up combos and making it through some platforming can be very satisfying. I think these are an improvement of Gamma's stages in SA1 in every way. No, I don't think the control is worse, but I don't think it's better either. I feel like a lot of people just take small issues like the slow turning and over-exaggerate it to make this game look as bad as possible. So while these may not be amazing like the speed levels, that doesn't mean I can't find a lot of fun in them. I never groan whenever I have to play one of these in story mode, and if I'm coming back to these for something like the Chow Garden, I end up having a fun time. Lastly, we have the treasure hunting stages belonging to Knuckles and Rouge. In SA1, I thought Knuckles had some fun levels, but there's a lot of room for improvement, mainly because they were too easy. Believe it or not, I think the hunting stages of Adventure 2 are actually better than the ones we saw in SA1. Yeah, these stages get a lot of hate, and I'll go on record and say that in the end, this is still my least favorite of the gameplay styles in SA2, but I still think this is pretty good. The name of the game here is about collecting 3 objects within a level, usually being a Master Emerald shard, but can also be a Chaos Emerald or a key. You locate them with your radar as you glide and climb walls with Knuckles or Rouge. Their control remains basically the same. Aside from climbing and gliding, you can dig through surfaces as you could in SA1, but you can also dive straight down if you press the button in midair, which is a nice way to make it down to the surface quickly. Knuckles can also obtain a swimming upgrade to help with some water levels, but that's mostly it. SA2 tweaks some mechanics from the hunting stages in SA1, and these are the biggest talking points with these stages, so let's address the elephant in the room, the downgraded radar. The radar in SA1 was very precise. It would change color depending on how close you are, and among these colors the beeping speed would also increase. Now in SA2, not only is it less precise, but say it with me, you can only detect 1 emerald at a time, a direct downgrade from SA1. I'm not really sure why they did this. Was it to pad out the length of these stages? I mean, my main issue with the hunting stages from SA1 was how they were too short, and that could have been solved with more sprawling level designs. That's something they did, but this was completely unnecessary. It's not like you can't go out of order. They all spawn at once, so you can find a shard your radar isn't detecting, but this is basically only possible within the smaller levels. Once they get bigger, that isn't going to be an option. version. I am an advocate for more spacious level design in these stages, but when the game completely randomizes the order of shards I have to collect, it can feel wacky. For example, take a level like Meteor Herd, a very vertical level. My first piece could be towards the top, my second piece could be around the bottom of the map, and my third one could be around the middle area. It leads to some times where you must retrace your steps, and I'm not a huge fan of that. This only really becomes an issue with the very open space levels like Meteor Herd. The rest are confined enough to the point that flying around for a bit can usually give me a lead, or sometimes colliding just isn't an option. Okay, I'm gonna be blunt here. Death Chamber, Knuckles' 4th level, is the worst stage in the entirety of Adventure 2. Think about it, why are these stages so open? It's so you can use Knuckles' moveset to glide around and climb up walls to easily explore your surroundings. How about we have a level where you can't do that? Death Chamber consists of rooms and hallways, so locating the one and only shard you can detect is a big pain in the ass. This level is literally built like Tomb Time from Crash Bandicoot 3. They tried to make it better with 3 main areas that have distinct colors, maps to let you know where you are, and it's laid out like a triangle so you can access all the other areas from whichever one you're in, but it still has problematic level design, especially because all the hallways you run through look the damn same. Egg Quarters is Rouge's equivalent to Death Chamber, but it's much smaller since it's early in the dark story, so it's alright. Since you can't just glide around or start detecting your next piece, you'll have to rely a lot on the newly implemented hint monitor system. Instead of Tikal just straight up telling you where to go, you're allowed 3 hints per shard, which are actual clues and not answers. Each hint gets more and more descriptive, but hints can lower the score you get when collecting a shard. Most people don't like this new system because, and I quote, it requires you to be familiar with the level design. By that same logic, aren't the Sonic stages bad if there are shortcuts that increase your score that you may not know about on your first playthrough? Yeah, it makes no sense. Maybe they think that you won't need the hints once you're familiar with the level design, but hints are not the only factor in the score you're given after collecting a shard, for fuck's sake. Speed is a very important factor too. You can have a good balance between the two to get the A rank. I don't know why people act like it's impossible to not use hints and get an A rank. I did it for a lot of levels. Once you're familiar with the level design, which is something that comes from replayability, one of the main elements of SA2, you should be fine with only using like 1 hint per shard, because at that point your speed should make up for it. Replaying these stages to get better and better was pretty fun, and I thought the majority of stages were well designed. Some people have said it's all luck due to the random emerald locations, but it's luck that can be eliminated with skill and replayability. In case you haven't been able to tell from my points so far, the level design is much more interesting because it features a lot more room to explore and has more defining gimmicks, like controlling the water level in Aquatic Mine, the suspenseful timer of Security Hall, the insane verticality of Meteor Herd, or the planetoids with their own gravitational pull and mat space that specialize in feeling janky. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one either. It's very spacious, which isn't inherently bad, but when I have to deal with these janky planetoids that feel impossible to escape, it can feel a bit annoying. And who thought having hint monitors that either straight up lie to you or reverse the letters was a good idea? I really hope that person got fired. This is my least favorite out of the 3 gameplay styles, but they certainly aren't bad. Apart from a few stinkers that are either just janky or don't mesh well with the mechanics, the majority of treasure hunting stages are well designed and fun to explore and replay. A lot of people only care about the fact that the radar was downgraded, and I seriously don't get how this alone just makes SA1's hunting stages better. Like, I enjoyed them in that game, but I'd much rather these stages with interesting, varied, and expansive level design that greatly incentivizes replayability thanks to the ranking system, rather than these levels that are pretty small and easy to complete since the game can just tell you where to go. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't wish the radar wasn't a regression of SA1, but that's the only issue among the pool of improvements to the formula, and I'm not gonna blow it out of proportion because I think these are enjoyable levels. Yeah, it's certainly not perfect, but none of these gameplay styles are. What we have here are some solid hunting stages. Alright, now we're done discussing the core gameplay. I figured we could start talking about the narrative featured in this game, but first I'd like to give an overview of the presentation seen in Adventure 2, because in its predecessor it was a big talking point. As many of you are aware, SA1's presentation became quite infamous because they were just really clunky and aged quite poorly. I don't really believe that the bad cutscenes in SA1 harmed the story that much, but it's very easy to laugh at, due to how primitive and unpolished they are. Releasing about 2 years after Adventure 1, the cutscenes in Adventure 2 are much better to look at since technology was advancing rapidly around this time. It's not perfect, most games from the 6th generation can look dated in their cutscenes, but it's still fine. It looks like the second coming of Christ when compared to SA1. The animations are much more fluid and they don't feel as stiff because of the team's choice to use motion capture, which makes it feel a lot more realistic. The cutscenes flow well and there aren't really any awkward pauses between lines. The lip sync is still awkward because the lip movements only sync up with the Japanese dialogue and this wasn't fixed for the English localization. Sonic Team also composed chose some music that is exclusively used for cutscenes. The music that would play in cutscenes could get quite repetitive in SA1. It was mostly character themes and hub world themes. I think there was like one event theme in total. Character themes are used during appropriate moments, and frankly, I think they usually add a lot to whatever scene it's used in, but more importantly, there are multiple tracks here to fit multiple situations. Yeah, the music is nice and all, but it can also get pretty damn loud sometimes. The audio mixing is not very good, and sometimes it'll drain out the characters' voices.
So that was your plan from the beginning. Or was it a direct order from the president?
Thank God this game has subtitles. The poor audio mixing was an issue since the original release, but it's an issue that has been accentuated with later releases of the game. The version I played was the Steam port, which was a remaster of the GameCube version, which was a port of the Dreamcast version. And speaking of audio, the voice cast also makes some improvements over their work in SA1. Most of the voices were fine, with the exception of Tails, but the direction was where most of my critiques lied. I've heard that the actors didn't even know the context of their lines, which actually answers some questions, because a lot of these sounded like they need an extra take. The voice cast of SA2 really feel like they got into the role much more, and awkward delivery is kept to a minimum, although there are a few occasions where this can happen. The voices I enjoyed from SA1 do an even better job here, such as Dean Bristow as Eggman and Ryan Drummond as Sonic. Tails has a new voice actor, and this time it isn't nails on a chalkboard. Yeah, Tails is a kid and all, but between SA1 and 2, the latter strikes a better balance between sounding like a kid and not being annoying. This is one of my favorite Tails voices, because there have been a lot over the years. His direction could have some improvement though, because it sounds like he is directly reading off of the script like a text-to-speech voice. The other new voice actors are nice as well, like Lanny Minella for Rouge, and David Humphrey really sold Shadow's badass and heartless exterior. But okay, shall we? Let's start with the hero story. I believe most people are going to be choosing that one first.
Huh.
Technically, it starts with the dark story, but no one chooses that story first. So when it comes to the first impression, this is what matters because it's really good. It shows you exactly what Sonic's character is like through this explosive introduction. The way in which he takes out everyone on board and grabs the wing of the helicopter to snowboard down the streets of San Francisco shows us that he's a free spirit that does whatever he wants. His snarky grin and his quips show us that he's cool and he likes to do things with style. Also, holy shit, Sonic got arrested? The hell is with that? I gotta keep on playing to find out. Fortunately, when you do keep on playing, it's a lot of fun because City Escape is a great intro level to this game. I like how ballsy it is to start the first level with a snowboarding sequence, rather than the typical intro scene in Emerald Coast of SA1. This level really shows you SA2 isn't fucking around. After that great introduction, he encounters some more military robots that he makes light work out of, unless you are me at the age of 7. And here we have another iconic cutscene where he encounters Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form. What's Shadow's deal? Let's back up a little bit and discuss the beginning of the Dark Story, which actually begins before the hero story. It begins as Eggman is seen breaking into a highly secured gun facility with the goal of finding the secret weapon he learned of in his grandfather's diary, also known as Gerald Robotnik. He discovers a black hedgehog who he initially mistakes as Sonic, more on that later, but the hedgehog introduces himself as Shadow the Hedgehog, and grants Eggman one wish for releasing him from captivity like a damn genie. He tells Eggman to bring more Chaos Emeralds as he'll be waiting in the Space Colony Ark. What is this Ark? We'll learn more about that later. Moving on, we're shown a news report of a criminal who allegedly robbed a bank and stole a Chaos Emerald. We're shown a close-up of the criminal who looks an awful lot like Shadow, but no, that's Sonic. Okay, so the whole idea of Shadow being confused for Sonic has confused a lot of people and has also been criticized by critics for not making a lot of sense, and it's certainly a weird conundrum. The reason the story is like this does kind of make sense. Shadow's early design resembled Sonic a lot more, but with longer hair and more of a grayscale color palette, but it was changed because it was too similar. I am in favor of this change because now Shadow's design is much more distinctive while still being quite similar to Sonic, but it did result in the story taking a slight hit. However, I can somewhat defend this. Firstly, the assumption that it was Sonic comes from the witnesses, which aren't going to be super reliable. I've played Ace Attorney before, I would know. It's not like the general public is going to know who Shadow is. If they see a short hedgehog, they are probably going to assume it's Sonic, even though they look different. I mean, he stole a Chaos Emerald, so witnesses saw Shadow with that, and some may have also witnessed Sonic transforming into Super Sonic to fight Perfect Chaos in the city. Maybe they thought he transformed with the Emerald. There's also the theory that the military, aka Gun, is trying to hide Shadow's identity, which does make sense, but it's never hinted at in-game. It would make sense because Gunn would know about Shadow's captivity and his identity should have been kept top secret. However, I wish the game took measures to imply that Gunn was covering up Shadow's existence. Maybe the news report Eggman saw could have specified that Gunn labeled the suspect as Sonic rather than witnesses. Really, I don't mind this little confusion, but I think the game could have done a better job at hinting at a reason as to why this happens, rather than leaving so many people confused. I can definitely buy most of these explanations, but it would have been better if a little hint was thrown in there. Shadow was causing a ruckus in the city because of his goal to enact revenge against all of humanity. This motive comes from an old friend of Shadow's, Maria, and this was her dying wish, after she saved Shadow from the Ark during an accident 50 years ago. Now we're brought back to this confrontation between Sonic and Shadow that I honestly love. It's one of the most iconic cutscenes in this game for a great reason. Once Sonic sees that Shadow has a Chaos Emerald, he gets the idea that the military has mistaken him for the likes of Shadow, but when he tries to attack, Shadow uses an advanced technique called Chaos Control to warp past Sonic at a speed he can't even comprehend. This scene does an excellent job of setting up the rivalry between Sonic and Shadow. I love how dazzled Sonic is and how full of himself Shadow is in this cutscene, only talking to Sonic when announcing that he is the ultimate life form. It captures Shadow's exterior very well. He's too cool to care about anyone because he's the best. Shadow is also consistently placed above Sonic to represent how he is more powerful. It's a great cutscene that is endlessly quotable. Anyways, the cutscene ends with Shadow making his escape, leading to Sonic getting ambushed by the military again and he is arrested. What a dick move, Shadow. We then cut to Tails in his Cyclone flying towards Prison Island, where Sonic is being held captive for totally destroying military buildings and robbing a bank. When you think about it, this is actually a pretty cool scene since we see Tails taking the initiative and helping out for once. This is paying respects to his great character arc from SA1 where he learns that he can do things on his own without relying on Sonic and he gains more confidence as a result. On Prison Island, we see Amy as well. Her arc wasn't a constant theme in her story like Tails, but towards the end, she does acknowledge how she wants to make Sonic respect her after she faced her fears. Now she's breaking into a prison to save Sonic, just like Tails. But it begs the question of how she even got here in the first place. She's actually the one who directly releases him from captivity, and even pokes fun at him for the role reversal in this situation. Amy also informs Sonic that Shadow is working with Eggman, which is a reveal during the hero story, but the dark story provides you with much more knowledge to understand their relationship and what they were doing at Prison Island. So let's get back to their side. So after Shadow mentioned the Ark, Eggman begins investigating the place via a teleporter he found in his pyramid base. There, he meets up with Shadow, who explains that the Ark was the first space colony created by mankind, and it had a hidden research facility where weapons of mass destruction were being created under the military's nose. It was shut down 50 years ago due to an accident we don't know everything about yet. The reason Shadow told him to bring more Chaos Emeralds was that one of these weapons, the Eclipse Cannon, has the power to destroy an entire planet if powered by all 7 Chaos Emeralds. So then, the world could be yours. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Eggman loves this plan, but suddenly Rouge the Bat emerges from the shadows. I didn't mention Rouge or Knuckles until now, because this is when they actually become relevant, so let's back up a little bit. Pretty early into the game, we're shown Knuckles and Rouge having a quarrel over the Master Emerald in the desert area and not Angel Island for some reason. Rouge wants the Master Emerald because she's a selfish treasure hunter who wants to add it to her collection. This obviously doesn't jive well with Knuckles because he's the one that understands the importance of the Master Emerald. Eggman comes to steal it as he is following the signal from the Chaos Emeralds that Shadow requested, but Knuckles, with the prior knowledge of what happened in SA1, purposefully shatters the Master Emerald to prevent it from being stolen so he can go duct tape it back together or something like he did last time. But now he's got Rouge trying to beat him to the punch because of her obsession with jewelry. Here we have another great rivalry being set up here, Knuckles versus Rouge. Yeah, in case you haven't noticed, this game is full of rivalries that test our characters in new ways. Knuckles is a calm but short-tempered individual who is devoted to his purpose of guarding the Master Emerald, and he can also be somewhat gullible. Rouge reflects his attitude perfectly by being sassy and narcissistic. She thinks she's hot shit, which some Sonic fans might agree with, and I love how much she pisses off Knuckles because she's good at pushing his buttons. Their constant bickering is always entertaining to watch, especially with Knuckles' macho exterior. However, in this game, she's also working as a government spy, which is why she later breaks into Eggman's hidden pyramid base. Her goal is to obtain more info on Shadow. In this pyramid base, she is led to the space colony Ark, where she eavesdrops on Shadow and Eggman's entire conversation and strikes a deal with the mad scientist. If Eggman lets her use his radar for her treasure hunting interests, she'll return the favor by helping them collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds for the Eclipse Cannon. Eggman likes this and they become a team. Then they devise a plan to retrieve some Chaos Emeralds located on Prison Island. Eggman goes in as a distraction to alert the military, while Rouge sneaks into the cargo and steals the Chaos Emeralds before the bomb set up by Shadow detonates and blows up the entire island. Not gonna lie, the setup to this whole plan feels pretty epic. At first, it may seem a little confusing that Rouge is willing to just let Prison Island get blown up, considering how she is working for the government, but it can kind of make sense when you consider how she is willing to do whatever it takes to get what she wants. Her goal is to learn more about Project Shadow, which the president most likely approved of, but knowing her, there is a good chance she tried to fly completely under the radar here, motivated by her obsession with jewelry. The plan gets clutched up, since after stealing the emeralds, Rouge gets locked in a safe when the entire island is about to get blown to smithereens, and Shadow decides to step in and help her out once he sees the parallels between Rouge and his old friend Maria. Of course, with this cool exterior, he rationalizes this by saying he did it for the emeralds. But this is an important moment for Shadow's development. It shows us that he isn't as much of a heartless badass as he thinks he is, because he still cares about people. I mean, he's doing all this evil shit for the sake of his old friend's wishes, so that should say a lot about his true colors. And on the way to save Rouge, he runs into Sonic, since he's in the process of escaping the island after being freed by Amy. This gives us another iconic and quotable interaction between Sonic and Shadow, where Sonic is utterly pissed off and Shadow is provoking him too. I actually like how Sonic interrupts Shadow, because it's funny seeing how he's at his boiling point after all of Shadow's shit. Was it intentional? I don't even know, to be honest. Their clash results in a draw because Eggman alerts Shadow that he's gotta hurry up and escape the island before it blows up, which prompts Sonic to also make his escape. Right in the nick of time, Shadow is able to save Rouge via Chaos Control. With their plan being a success, Team Dark now has 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Oh yeah, remember the Eclipse Cannon?
That's right, this is what you get! My super laser pit!
Shit, wrong video. That's right, Eggman pissed on blew up half the fucking moon as a warning shot to not only get the country to surrender to the Eggman Empire, but to call out Shadow the Hedgehog for being a bitch-ass mother... Okay, I gotta stop now. Sorry, but I can't just not think of the fan dub when I rewatch this cutscene. In all seriousness, this is a great cutscene to show us that Eggman is not fucking around in this game. I think SA2 features Eggman at his peak because he's always conjuring up new plans to stay one step ahead of the heroes, and comes off as a big savage threat. And yeah, blowing up half the moon definitely helps in doing that. This is also one of the cutscenes people point towards when they say SA2 takes itself too seriously, but as I've discussed in some past videos, these arguments are always stupid. Yeah, world-ending stakes, way too serious for a Sonic game. Like when they start saying hell and damn, yeah, I'd say they are taking it too seriously because it's a franchise targeted towards kids, but there's nothing wrong with serious stakes like this. In fact, it enhances the story a lot. It's called tension. Nobody wants to watch a story where characters don't take things seriously. That's why Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces are fucking terrible plots. Alright, let's get back to the fact that half the fucking moon was blown up. Of course, the heroes are shaken up a lot by this. Sonic is able to conclude that this is why Eggman and Shadow were looking for the Chaos Emeralds, then Tails just pulls one right out of his ass. Apparently he was given this emerald after saving Station Square from the missile in SA1, so I guess that's cool continuity. Tails uses his Chaos Emerald to track down Eggman's location since the Chaos Emeralds are like magnets. And oh yeah, since Tails assisted in a prison break, he now has $1 million bounty. And this is probably the only time the word sex will be said in a Sonic game.
Sex?
For a while, Tails isn't able to get any signals from the Emerald, so it takes him 13 hours to get the idea that they may be in space. You know, the place in which the laser was shot from? Kinda goofed up there, Tails. Oh look, there's Knuckles. Now he unites with the other heroes. Suddenly, Tails is able to track a call between the President and Eggman, so he begins pursuing the President's limousine. Yay, woohoo, boring ass driving stage, my favorite. And to make it even better, the Dark Story also has one, because they heard in a newspaper that Tails has a Chaos Emerald, so they start pursuing him. In the President's limousine, Eggman talks with the President and demands that he must either surrender or let his country cease to exist within the next 24 hours. Suddenly, Suddenly, Sonic and Tails break into the limousine because for some reason it was just open, and Tails links the video call back to the Space Colony Ark, which is where Eggman is. The heroes are led to Eggman's hidden pyramid base since Knuckles saw Eggman and Rouge go in there, so they think they'll be able to get to the Ark from there. This moment also feels pretty badass, since we're finally gaining the upper hand and getting closer to thwarting Eggman's plans. It gives off a similar vibe to Team Dark's mission on Prison Island. Stakes are high and everyone has their own role to fulfill. Tails is tasked with locating the entrance so Sonic can go in and infiltrate the base, until Knuckles needs to find the key to make their way into the center of the base. Knuckles also fights this ghost thing called King Boom Boo, which serves no other purpose than scaring 7-year-olds like it did to me. After dealing with that thing, Eggman ambushes the heroes with the Egg Golem, a golem that Eggman mind-controlled to do his bidding that Sonic deals with quickly. However, in the Dark story, it turns on Eggman, so he has his own boss fight against it as well. Anyways, the heroes locate a rocket inside the pyramid base and use that to make their way into outer space to reach the space colony. Yeah, it is a little weird that Eggman has a rocket in the same base that has a teleportation device, but it's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be, frankly. The next cutscene is a bit awkward to watch though. It's really lacking in good sound design, since you mostly just hear the characters' voices as the rocket is about to crash.
Oh no! Don't touch that lever!
Excluding Knuckles, the heroes make it on board the Ark. Where is Knuckles? Well, he bailed on them after they lost the Master Emerald shards in space. With 2 hours to spare, the hero side, and by that I mean mostly Tails, devise a plan to prevent the Eclipse Cannon from going off via a fake emerald Tails created. It has the same properties and wavelengths as a real one, but it's lacking in power when compared to real Chaos Emeralds. He designed it to reverse the energy field in the Chaos Emeralds, so once it's placed into the Eclipse Cannon, it should blow up and stop Eggman's plan to destroy the world. Tails making this is not unbelievable like people say, because not only did he have a Chaos Emerald to study, but this is the same guy who has a plane that can transform into a mech. He's a smart fella. The two set off to put their plan into motion, and I say two because Amy does nothing. Sorry, you're not a playable character. This part of the game is when things get really tense and badass. Everyone has something to fulfill and time is of the essence. While this is going on, Rouge gets the password to the Space Colony control panel and begins looking into what Shadow truly is. That's before she realizes more of the Master Emerald shards are outside the Space Colony and goes to try and beat Knuckles to the punch. After both of them play their respective space levels, they have a fight with each other, and we get another fun interaction between the two that also wraps up their rivalry well. Once again, I think both of these characters have great chemistry. Knuckles and Rouge are pretty good characters in their own right, but their dynamic is very entertaining to watch. She also gives up all her Master Emerald shards, but of course, it's because they stink like echidnas do. So now Knuckles can fully repair the Master Emerald. Knuckles manages to apologize to Rouge, and after he leaves, we see Rouge give off a little smirk. This is a nice way to wrap up their rivalry, as the two finally stop bickering over everything and put their differences aside. However, their bickering was very entertaining, with how Rouge's sass and ego conflict with Knuckles' macho exterior. I like how Knuckles' rival was somewhat as arrogant as Rouge, since he gets frustrated easily and isn't that social. Anyways, cutting back to Sonic and Tails' plan to thwart the Eclipse Cannon, Sonic makes it to the control room with 45 minutes left on the clock. However, before he could slam dunk the fake emerald into the Eclipse Cannon, Eggman hijacks the walkie-talkie and forces Sonic to retreat and head over to Amy because Amy is... yeah, we don't know yet, but it can't be good if Eggman is involved. This is such a great holy shit moment, because you just thought everything was gonna work out and then everything was flipped on its head. As much as I do love this moment, I do have to point out a flaw in the pacing and general flow of this moment. This cutscene plays right after Eternal Engine, Tails' level, but right after this scene we go back in time to Knuckles and we get his moment with Rouge and all, and then we get back to present day and get to play Sonic's crazy Gadget, where he's rushing towards Eggman and Amy. It kinda kills the tension, because one of the main factors of Crazy Gadget is the suspense from this cutscene. With 33 minutes remaining, Sonic makes it to Eggman, where he is holding Amy at gunpoint as he demands Sonic to hand over the emerald. From Eggman's perspective, the stars are aligning here, as he has Sonic trapped in the perfect position for him to hand over the last emerald he needs. But Sonic realizes that he can give Eggman Tails' fake emerald, so it still ends up destroying the Eclipse Cannon, and he'll also save Amy. Both sides have been pitted against each other and are using their full wit to win. So what happens next? Sonic walks over to Eggman, knowing that he's totally about to troll him, but then... Sonic was the one that actually got trolled. This entire time, Eggman knew that he had a fake emerald because back at his pyramid base, his computer was detecting 2 readings from a Chaos Emerald, meaning one of them had to be fake. To make it even better, Eggman tricks Tails into revealing it was a fake. From the hero side, it looks as if everything is under control until Tails spills the beans. But on the dark side, we know Eggman is fully aware of how everything is going to play out. But being as cunning and egotistical as he is, he gets Tails to slip up just so they can feel worse about themselves. What else can I say? Eggman is at his best right here. This mistake seemingly costs the heroes everything because Sonic is trapped in a capsule that is launched into space. An interesting parallel between him and Shadow, and he's sent to straight up fucking die. Like, how the hell is he gonna escape this? Eggman finally got him. He bids one last farewell to Amy while also placing all his hope in Tails, and there he goes, sent off to become nothing but floating chunks in space. Also, did I mention that this is my favorite cutscene in the entire game? It's a great and shocking twist in the narrative while also perfectly encapsulating Sonic and Eggman as characters. We see Sonic plotting something that I'll discuss in a minute, but whether or not he pulls off this crazy last-minute plan is still up in the air because before we can see the outcome of this, we cut back to the arc where they see Sonic's capsule explode. So to them, yeah, he died. Tails begins to fight Eggman to fulfill Sonic's dying wish. I haven't discussed this that much, but among the other rivalries, the conflict of Tails versus Eggman has been leading up to this moment. Both parties are basically the brains of their respective teams and were crucial to all the plans that led them to this moment. This clash is especially a rite of passage in Tails' character development. As early as the beginning of SA1, we see how Tails fears Eggman and he lacks the confidence to do things on his own. By the end of that game, he's forced to save Station Square from Eggman, which resulted in a great moment for his character where he realized that he did something on his own. And after leading almost all the operations of the hero side in Adventure 2, he's now tasked with fulfilling the dying wish of the person he's looked up to the most in his life. The fact that he's able to go head to head with Eggman like this after how he started in SA1 is really great for his character. Who wins this duel? That's also up in the air because after the boss fight we cut back to Sonic again. Okay, we all know Sonic doesn't die here, but regardless, this is another great and badass moment because Sonic has a sudden realization of how he can get himself out of this mess. Since he was trapped in the capsule while holding the bootleg emerald, he remembers Tails describing it as an emerald with the same wavelengths and properties but less powerful. He then gets the idea to utilize chaos control with the fake emerald, an advanced technique used by Shadow which has the possibility of warping the user through time and space. Right before the capsule explodes, he succeeds in pulling off the chaos control and ends up back in the space colony arc, where his goal goes back to slam dunking the fake emerald into the Eclipse cannon in the nick of time. But of course, I have to defend this game again because so many people just cannot buy the fact that Sonic pulled off chaos control just by watching Shadow do it once. But looking at it like this is quite naive because there are outside factors you have to consider, mainly with Sonic's past experience using chaos emeralds. Most people can understand that it is possible with the Mimic Emerald that's just less powerful, but apparently learning to use it after watching Shadow once just makes no sense. Well, first of all, people say that like chaos control is fucking algebra 3 or something. From what we've seen, Shadow activates chaos control by simply holding it and presumably harnessing the energy to warp through time and space. Well, okay then, Sonic should definitely know how to do that because isn't that how he used the emeralds to go super on multiple occasions? He would know a thing or two about how the chaos emeralds work, so it makes sense. Yeah, the chances were very low because it was his first time performing the trick and it was a do or die scenario, but the fact that he surpassed the seemingly impossible odds is basically the entire point, but there are still logical explanations as to how it could have happened. It's pretty badass, okay? But let's back up a little bit and see what's going on with Rouge and Shadow in the control room. Shadow hears Rouge plotting on stealing the emeralds for herself and finally uncovers her as the government spy Rouge the Bat. But after her cover was blown, Rouge strikes back against Shadow by revealing what she has found after researching the ultimate life form. If you stop to look at the paper she's holding, you can see this ultimate life form looks nothing like Shadow, so it begs the question of whether or not he really is the ultimate life form. Shadow declares that whether or not he's fake doesn't matter because he's still Shadow and he wants to fulfill his promise to Maria. He also threatens to kill Rouge if she steals the emerald. This is a pretty cool moment with lots of plot reveals that spawns more questions that will eventually be answered. But anyways, Eggman orders Shadow to deal with whoever is trying to get to the Eclipse cannon. I wonder who that could be. Yeah, it's Sonic, who's making his way back to the Eclipse Cannon to carry out the mission. When they interact this time, we see them talk like normal people rather than screaming and arguing, which shows how they've gained more respect for each other and have matured a little bit. Just like everyone else, Shadow was under the assumption that Sonic died after the capsule exploded, so he's impressed with Sonic's chaos control. He realizes that there's more to Sonic than just being a hedgehog that looks like him, which shows us how the two have become rivals that have a level of respect for each other. As the two transition from walking to running and the music reaches absurd levels of volume, the two go at it again to race through the Eclipse Cannon, and well, whoever won is kinda up to interpretation. Probably Sonic, since he got to the Eclipse Cannon at the end of the hero story. And Shadow definitely would have killed him. After the duel, we cut back to Tails, who was shown to have won his fight against Eggman. Him and Amy mourn the loss of their lost comrade until Sonic calls Tails on the walkie-talkie and shows them how he's still alive. However, this serves as a distraction for Eggman to grab the real Chaos Emerald Tails had, and he manages to sneak off and throw it into the Eclipse Cannon despite Sonic's effort. But however, right at the end of the Dark story, rather than a laser being fired, multiple warnings appear on the console, thus bringing us to a cliffhanger that ends the Hero and Dark stories. But as is known, this is not the end of the story because completing both campaigns will unlock a last story to give us a conclusion, but before diving into the last story, I'd like to talk about everything else this game has to offer because there is still more, such as all the side activities there are for you to complete besides the main quest. And I'll say this now, SA2 does a much better job at incentivizing replayability via the mechanics and all the new content it offers. I mean, we don't unlock Game Gear games anymore, but is losing Sonic Drift really a bad thing? I'll let you be the judge, but I'll also judge you based on your answer. First of all, I'd say the ranking system alone makes this game more replayable, because all the reincorporated gameplay styles were built with it in mind, so that makes this a more replayable experience. I already discussed why I want to kiss the ranking system, so I won't waste your time anymore. Returning from Adventure 1, we have emblems as a sorta collectible. Basically, you complete tasks like beating levels and collect emblems. There are 180 total. Replacing the extra B and A missions of SA1, each level has 4 extra missions to complete. The first one is obviously your objective while playing through the main campaigns. Mission 2 tasks you with collecting 100 rings, similarly to how you would collect 50 for the B missions in SA1. These are better since I think 100 incentivizes you to explore more, because I collect 50 rings in my sleep. However, you don't really have to maintain your rings, you just have to collect 100 rings as fast as possible because the mission ends after you reach 100, and the ranking you score at the end of these is solely based on time, and I like that. With Knuckles or Rouge, you basically have to scour the ends of the earth to find 100, but it's not bad since there aren't really a lot of enemies that can get in your way. It's just about memorizing the quickest way to get 100. Getting 100 rings with Tails or Eggman can actually be quite frustrating, especially with Tails because his levels have some cheap enemy placements, and overall Eggmans are just more well designed. You can't get hit at all because there aren't that many rings to begin with, so even just finishing these missions can not only get tiring but annoying. And if you want to do these fast enough to get the A rank, then you'll have to memorize exactly when the game decides to throw enemies in your face so you can have a totally epic fail. Mission Street's 100 ring mission made me want to throw my controller out the window, so I ended up just giving up and didn't bother with most other stages. Okay, rant over. Mission 3 is about locating a lost Chow, which also encourages exploration, but more so. They don't change much across the different gameplay styles, because as every character you'll be exploring every nook and cranny to find the ancient ruins that'll lead you to the Chow. These are alright, and I like how it's based on time alone, but to even find the lost Chow, you're gonna need to collect the Mystic Melody upgrade for each character, which can get a little tiring, and I just don't think it was super necessary to have to find these upgrades. The focus of Mission 4 is about clearing the stage under a challenging time limit, however normal ranking requirements are used here. And a few time limits did challenge me, like with Crazy Gadget and Radical Highway. I wish these ones were also solely based on time, since going for a fast time rather than a perfect run would require you to play the level with a different mindset, and I believe that's what these missions should do. The final mission for each stage is about clearing a harder version of the level, which I actually kinda like, mainly for the speed stages. They add more obstacles, more enemies, so playing through them feels fresh because it can mess with your muscle memory in a good and challenging way, like how the ramps are in different locations in City Escape. Speaking of City Escape hard mode, why? Tails and Eggman's hard modes mainly just add more enemies, and if I'm being honest, the only one I actually tried was Prison Lane, and in the very first shooting levels version of hard mode, I was already hit with lots of unfair enemy placements that quickly got on my nerves. I can only imagine what Mission Street is like, but you can tell I didn't bother because I'm still alive. Hard mode for the hunting stages is more interesting because the emeralds are actually in set locations. However, finding them is the hard part. They're alright, and once you know where to find them, it's just about grabbing them as fast as possible. Overall, the side missions can add some nice replay value, but their quality ranges from decent to irritating. It mainly depends on which character because I think Sonic and Shadows are fine, but I do not like doing them with the mechs. Returning from Adventure 1 is the beloved and iconic Chow Garden, which is an element that drives a lot of people towards replaying the levels in this game. In SA1, I spent like 2 minutes here, but in this game I took much more time to try and get immersed in the Chow Garden, and it's alright. I don't really think it's as godly as most Sonic fans would call it, but at most, it's a neat distraction that adds some replay value, especially since it's much more advanced than in SA1. In both games, you can give your Chow animals to inherent stats, but in SA2, most enemies drop Chaos Drives, which will always increase its stat and not add and subtract like animals, but they are still in the game. Your Chow can also lean towards the hero or dark alignments, based on which characters you raise them with. There's also an entire Chow kindergarten where you can drop them off to learn things, but just like actual school, I didn't seem to notice any effects it had on the Chow, to be honest. You'll be raising the Chow so they can compete in Chow races, as well as Chow karate in SA2 Battle. Why is this DLC, by the way? And there is a little satisfaction in seeing your Chow do well after stuffing it with Chaos Drives, even though you just watch them and don't really do anything. Look, you don't play Chow races for action-packed gameplay. You play the actual stages for action-packed gameplay, which you'll have to do a lot because killing enemies is how you obtain Chaos Drives. The Chow Garden works best whenever you're constantly coming back to it while replaying the stages because it's a big time sink. You likely won't get much out of it if you save it for the very end of your 100% playthrough. Personally, I think it's overrated, but I kinda enjoyed raising my Chow. A lot of people really love it and say it's one of the best parts of SA2, so clearly it worked, right? Outside of replaying the main levels for the side missions or Chow Garden, you can play with a few other game modes. One of them is a kart racing mode, which is like the bare minimum for a kart racer. You're forced to dip your toes in it during the main campaign because Tails and Rouge have these driving levels, and honestly, I always groan when I get to these. In these tracks, the layout is never interesting. You just turn a few times and that alone feels wacky, since sometimes you have to press A again to drift and sometimes you don't. It doesn't make much sense. The handling also just isn't that smooth. This is just the most whatever thing ever. Most reviews don't even mention the kart races, and I don't really blame them, it's so forgettable. But in the end, it's still harmless. I don't think anyone is bummed out that the kart racing in SA2 kinda sucks. Maybe I would have had a more positive opinion if I got to play these with a friend as a kid, but I never did. But hey, I did get to play the multiplayer with friends as a kid. It's actually some good fun. The highlight, of course, being the Sonic and Shadow levels, because you get to race each other through a stage and it's quite fun. It has some unique multiplayer levels too. Sometimes you can activate some special moves to fuck up your opponent by freezing time or just attacking them, which can make things pretty heated. It's also pretty funny when you like accidentally activate it because just like everything else, it's also mapped to the action button. As Knuckles and Rouge, you get to compete to see who can find the most emerald shards, and it's alright. It'll test your knowledge of the level design because you want to get them faster than your opponent. With Eggman and Tails, you get this exhilarating gameplay. The battle port adds much more content to these, however it's $3 DLC on the Steam version, and for some reason I just didn't really feel like paying for it. Now, but a $30 Japanese demo disc of Parappa 2 and Ape Escape 2 sponsored by McDonald's? Fuck yeah, take my money. For what it's worth, I can easily say that this is the best multiplayer ever put into a Sonic game. Its only competition would be like Sonic Mania or Sonic 2, honestly. SA2 is never a game I think of when thinking about multiplayer games to play, but playing split screen with a friend can lead to an enjoyable experience with some great laughs in there. There's also a boss rush for the 2 people who care. You just fight all the bosses from each campaign with 1 set of lives. They should have started you off with like 1 or 2 lives if they wanted the marathon aspect to be challenging. I don't really care about this side game mode, so similarly to Kart Race, it's mediocre but harmless. Kinda like the actual bosses of SA2. Yeah, I forgot to talk about them until now, so let's make this brief. I'll acknowledge they're an improvement of the bosses in SA1, but to be fair, what isn't? Most of them are simple and easy, and none of them are as bad as the worst ones in SA1 like Chaos 4. Some just go on for a while like King Boom Boo, but maybe I'm just doing it wrong because I kinda just wait until he doesn't turn around. The character fights are also a lot better, but still not great. Some are just about hitting them at really picky times like the fight with Knuckles and Rouge, and some are more interesting like the second fight among Sonic and Shadow. The first Tails and Eggman fight is just as bad as Gamma's in SA1, but the second one puts more of an effort to make it more than just mindless, so it's not terrible. But bosses are just not SA2's strong suit, and I don't really care, to be honest. honest. Like, yeah, they throw a handful of bosses at you and they're fine, but you don't play Adventure 2 for the bosses, nor do you play Adventure 1 for the bosses, so I don't really care. But okay, what do you get for grabbing all 180 emblems? You get a 3D remake of Green Hill Zone. Yeah, nowadays this is normal because every damn game calls back to Green Hill, but in 2001 this was a pretty cool reward and a nice way to celebrate the 10th anniversary. Personally, I've never collected all of them, but maybe I will one day. The main thing that's stopping me is not wanting to do some specific side missions and the Chow Garden. It's a massive time sink. I had my fun with it, but there's still a lot of complex shit that I didn't mess around with. And oh yeah, I still have to talk about the amazing soundtrack in this game. I should have mentioned this in my Adventure 1 review, but that one stacks very high in my list of favorite Sonic soundtracks. Like, I'm talking probably top 2. The only other game that stands in the top 2 is this one, and honestly, I can't decide on which one is better because I change my mind a lot. They're both that good. A common critique that is brought up when discussing SA2's soundtrack is the oversaturation of rock. SA1 had some great genre variety, but in SA2 a lot of songs feature things like the electric guitar, and overall the soundtrack leans a lot more into rock. And to that I have to say, so what? Rock is like my favorite musical genre, so that's great for me. Yeah, I know that's biased, but no shit, it's music. I don't care if it's too much rock because I love all the tracks that utilize rock. And in its defense, it has different types of rock to match the themes of all the different characters. So much so that you can usually tell them apart without much trouble. Sonic's levels feature energetic rock that keeps you on the move and gets you pumped. Shadow's levels have some edgy techno beats to highlight his artificiality, with some rock thrown in there as well. And Eggman's levels have industrial rock, which relates to his technological intelligence. Rouge's stages have some smooth and groovy jazz pieces. And Knuckles gets all these corny rap songs that most people shit on, but I'd like to come out and say that I like them. What's not to love with songs like Aquatic Mine and Pumpkin Hill?
I ain't gonna let it get to me, I'm just gonna creep down in Pumpkin Hill. I got to find my lost piece. I know that it's here, I can sense it in my feet. The great emerald's power allows me to feel.
Overall, I think all of the music heard in each stage is some good shit, and I love how each character has their own style. It's great for a game all about character like this one. But I'd be committing a sin by not talking about all the vocal tracks that go with each character because I love most of them. I think Rouge's theme is just alright, mainly because of personal taste and all, but I can really get a kick out of the rest, whether it be the remixed SA1 themes for the returning heroes, or the new tracks for Shadow and Eggman. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles all get new renditions of their great themes from SA1, and I think most of them are better actually. Well okay, I'm kinda mixed on which version of It Doesn't Matter I like more, because I feel like SA1's version just hits much harder with Tony Harnell's vocals, but the SA2 rendition flows much better and is faster, which fits with a character like Sonic. I like Tails' new rendition of Believe in Myself a lot more than SA1's track with the same name. I just think it sounds better with female vocals that fit Tails a little better than last time. Knuckles' new version of Unknown from ME takes a very different approach that I actually find to be better. Instead of the groovy jazz piece with elements of rap, this one heavily leans into rap and remixes the lyrics more than the other two new renditions. It took me a while to warm up, but I think this one just appeals to my musical taste more, although I do really love the first version. Now let's take a look at Team Dark's vocal tracks, which are all new, starting with the man himself, Eggman, who gets the beloved and iconic EGGMAN, a song with great instrumentation and lyrics that just boast about how cool he is. I love this shit. Shadow's industrial theme, Throw It All Away, is also pretty iconic due to some of the cutscenes it's used in. I like this one quite a bit. The intro gets me pumped, but I'm not a huge fan of the vocal chorus. Like, I just don't hear this and say, fuck yeah, that's what I call a Shadow the Hedgehog, you get me? Still pretty good though. Rouge has a decent theme, being Flying to Freedom. The lyrics reflect how she's free-spirited and sassy, but kind of like Amy's track from Adventure 1. I just don't listen to this one a lot, not that Jazz is bad or anything. In conclusion, yeah, this is an amazing soundtrack. I don't care if it doesn't feature as many genres as its predecessor, because I'm able to jam to all the music anyway, and when combined with all the great bangers that are the vocal tracks, it earns its spot as one of my favorite soundtracks along with games like Sonic 3 and Adventure 1. Well, with everything else out of the way, I think it's about time we wrap up the story analysis with the last story that brings us an epic finale. It begins right where the last two stories left off, with Eggman inserting the last emerald into the Eclipse canon. Also, can I just say this now? Right off the bat, I think the structure of the last story is just better than the Supersonic campaign of SA1 because, in a way, it kind of felt tacked on. Every story in SA1 had their own individual goals, so once those are met, everything becomes calm until chaos comes back out of nowhere. The ending of the Dark story was setting up for this story by leaving you on a cliffhanger, where instead of firing the laser, multiple warnings appear on the control panel. Videos of Eggman's grandfather, Gerald Robotnik, not only start playing on the Ark, but on TVs all over the world, announcing that in about 20 minutes, the Ark is going to crash and impact the Earth because inserting the last emerald begun its collision course and it's rapidly falling down towards Earth. It's a pretty shocking twist. My mind was blown when I got here on my first playthrough as a kid, and rightfully so. This creates a drastic shift in tone because everyone, including the villains like Rouge, know that they're probably going to die. Eggman shows up to the main room with everyone else and presents his grandfather's diary. Everyone begins reading Gerald's diary, and this is when the truth about everything on the Ark is finally revealed. 50 years ago, Gerald Robotnik was developing Project Shadow aboard the Ark while being funded by the military. Project Shadow was meant to be the ultimate life form that would be pure and benefit mankind. But eventually, Gunn began to fear Gerald's research, so they took him into custody and killed everyone on board, which included his granddaughter Maria. Before they were able to put the bullet in her back, she ejected Shadow from the Ark, and when he learned that Maria died during what they called an accident, he went insane and couldn't bear the thought of her dying because of his research. He then remotely programmed the Ark to begin falling towards Earth once all 7 Chaos Emeralds were collected and inserted. Before his execution, he left his creation, Shadow, to carry out these plans, and in his diary he stated that if anyone wishes to unleash destruction upon the world, they seek Shadow. And at the very beginning of the story, Eggman learned about this and fell for the bait that would help Gerald enact his revenge against humanity, the ones that took everything away from him. I gotta say, this scene does a great job at making Gerald seem so menacing, even beyond the grave. We just learn that he was the one in control the entire time, and this scene where the writing in his diary becomes more and more sinister is frankly horrifying. The characters' reactions are very appropriate for this situation too. Everything in this scene just does a really good job at accompanying the drastic shift in tone. This is also the part of the video where I'm supposed to say, this is a Sonic game. I see nothing wrong with this game taking a dark and serious turn for the final act. I like this plot reveal a lot, however I do have a small issue with this scene, specifically something that happens before Eggman shows up. The fact that we see Rouge shows us that she didn't book it with the emeralds for some reason. Yeah, Shadow threatened her life and all that, but in that cutscene she does not come off as threatened, she just keeps antagonizing Shadow, so why doesn't she just grab them after? And the fact that her boss, aka the president, calls her, shows us that they were fine with what she did on Prison Island. And I mean, it's a bit of a stretch. Okay, we need to get back to the last story since this is a pretty heavy scene. Now that both the heroes and villains, excluding Shadow, now know that they all fell for Gerald's plans to wipe out all of humanity, they begin to work together to save the day. I've been talking about how all the games leading up to SA2 have risen in stakes, and this game brings them to their highest. Even after SA1, where Eggman was dethroned as the main villain, now he joins the heroes to stop the destruction of humanity. It's pretty damn cool. Oh yeah, so you know how it seemed like the Master Emerald was just kind of shoehorned into the plot? Well, now it actually comes in handy since they realize they can use the Master Emerald to stabilize the emeralds and possibly stop the Ark on its collision course. The Chaos Emerald readings are heading down to the cannon's core, so we then get a proper final level titled Cannon Ganon's core, where you get to play with all 3 gameplay styles on a mission to get to the core, of course. And this is a damn cool level. It has an interesting time stop gimmick that is shared across all the different characters, and the Knuckles and Rouge are also free from the radar. This was a great way to close off the game in the last story, since you get one final challenge as each character before reaching the end, and on top of that, the other characters have a much bigger role than in SA1's finale. Here, Tails, Eggman, Rouge, Knuckles, and Sonic are all working together, and it's a pretty epic feeling. Where's Shadow? Let's talk about that actually. Instead of helping, he's chilling back in the main room because everything is going according to plan for him. Assuming the Ark crashes into the Earth, then he would have fulfilled his only purpose in life, to avenge Maria and get revenge against all of humanity as she wished. Suddenly, Amy appears because she realizes that once again everyone just ditched her and she has nothing to do. Really, she hasn't done much in this story so far. She somehow got to Prison Island and freed Sonic with the assistance of Tails, but that's basically it. I can't even tell if it was supposed to be a gag that she's constantly left behind, because this is coming off the heels of her speech in SA1, where she wants to make Sonic respect her and actually get in on the action. Well, she kind of has a redemption here because she realizes that she needs to do more and begins to plead with Shadow to help out. She gives a speech about how people fight, but overall humanity is still good and there are things that make them happy. This is another example of why I enjoy Amy's character. Besides the weird and occasionally creepy crush on Sonic, I enjoy how idealistic she is in the adventure games, and she's an empathetic person. She's able to bring the good out of people like Gamma and now Shadow. It kinda sucks how this isn't what people know Amy for nowadays. The way in which she begs Shadow surprisingly draws parallels to Maria's dying wishes because, in actuality, Maria wanted Shadow to give humanity a chance and bring peace to the world. So you must be wondering how the hell Shadow's interpretation was so ass backwards. Well, it's heavily implied that Gerald altered Shadow's memories to motivate him to carry out this plan of revenge, because we know he could continue his research after the raid. I mean, when Rouge hops on the Ark computer, she can't find any data on the current Shadow, but instead the prototype, so we know he was made in secret. Well, then I remembered that during the raid, Shadow was ejected from the Ark, and at this point Maria wasn't even dead, so the Shadow that was ejected surely must have been the pure one, right? Well, as Rouge says, Shadow might not even be the real Shadow, because Gerald could have made a copy while he still had the chance during captivity. But then how was the evil one in the military base? Yeah, it's kinda confusing, but I don't think it ruins the plot or anything. This isn't answered, and I don't think they already planned on having him reappear in more games back in 2001, and I once again think it would be better if they were more clear, but I still enjoy this twist a lot. It shows us that while he is confident and prideful, he still cares deeply about people like Maria and even Rouge at one point when he saves her. I mean, he was carrying out all these evil deeds because it was what Maria wanted in his mind, so once he knows what she actually wished for, he is quick to jump right in and help everyone out. With 15 minutes left on the clock, they make it into the core of the Ark, where they encounter a shrine that looks just like the Master Emerald Shrine. Why does it look just like the one on Angel Island? Well, we know that Gerald was fascinated by ancient Echidna culture to an extent because it would explain a lot of things. The original design for the ultimate life form resembled Chaos in a way, which he likely got from the mural of Chaos in Lost World of SA1, and he must have gotten Shadow's final design from the mural in Hidden Palace, which prophesized Supersonic stopping Eggman in Sonic 3, and that would explain why Shadow's quills are exactly like those of Supersonic. See? It all makes sense, and it's a nice callback to the past games. Sonic and Knuckles suddenly encounter the prototype to the ultimate life form that was supposed to be encapsulated, presumably after the raid, but I'm guessing these signals Gerald programmed unleash the prototype since the Ark is on its collision course. But then Shadow makes a badass appearance to go head to head with the Bio Lizard, the prototype of the ultimate life form. Shadow gets a boss against his older brother that I actually do not think is terrible like most people. People complain about the camera since it works against the layout with these holes in the ground, but it is easy to anticipate with the lines on the floor to warn you ahead of time. And oh my god, his final phase is so difficult. I really don't get how people struggle here. The music also makes this boss seem unnerving, which fits the mood well. After Shadow takes care of the Bio Lizard, Sonic and Knuckles make their way to the shrine where Knuckles recites the same chant Takal uses in SA1, nearly word for word, but the translation is slightly different. However, instead of fixing the entire situation anticlimactically, the Bio Lizard strikes back and uses a special organ it has to perform chaos control to fuse with the Ark and keep it on its collision course. And then, the moment we've all been waiting for occurs. Sonic and Shadow give each other a look as if they both know what to do because... Fuck yeah! We're about to get a super badass, super Sonic, and super Shadow final boss up in this bitch! And indeed we do, against the Final Hazard. Basically the Bio-Lizard with the arc shoved deep inside its asshole. You have 5 minutes to save humanity from destruction in this boss that's actually not that bad. I'd say it's an improvement over the last game because you actually have to try, unlike Perfect Chaos. Well, for better or for worse, because the hitbox on the weak point isn't the most functional thing ever, sometimes you just get knocked back and it can get somewhat frustrating. The super forms do control well, with one button being for ascending and the other for descending. It's a fine control scheme. You control either Sonic or Shadow, and while you're playing as one of the hedgehogs, the other one is collecting rings, so when you switch to them after getting a hit in, they'll have more since they tick down like the super forms in other games. The game never tells you that you can fly above or under the arc to switch manually like that, so I was confused as hell as a kid, but overall it's a fine boss. But easily the best part of the entire fight is the fact that, like with SA1, we get to hear the main theme of the game, Live and Learn, blaring during the final boss, which does such a great job at setting the tone of this dire and epic final showdown. It really pumps you up and empowers the player, which I like as a subversion of the usual final boss music in video games, which makes you feel opposed and in danger. Sonic games have always sought to use music to enhance your motivation with energetic rock songs in the final bosses, and really, what can I say about Live and Learn that hasn't been said already? It's amazing, and the fact that it's used in this moment really enhances the meaning of the song. It has been used as a leitmotif in the menus, so you'll be familiar with the rhythm of the song at this point, but finally hearing it with lyrics in its entirety is such a great moment. It's easily one of my favorites out of all the vocal tracks in this series, top 3 material. There's a reason why it's often said to be the embodiment of modern Sonic. It's because it's an amazing kick-ass track with great instrumentation and powerful vocals. Even after they defeat the Final Hazard, the arc is still on its collision course with mere minutes left until they die. Sonic and Shadow get together and use one big chaos control to stabilize the arc and reset it back into its normal orbit. With that, the heroes and villains have finally and successfully stopped Gerald's plans and saved the world. However, after performing the super chaos control, Shadow falls down to the earth and presumably dies. I guess that chaos control was too much to handle. People say this comes out of nowhere, but during the final boss, Sonic and Shadow's dialogue shows that he's struggling with maintaining his super form, and I guess going super and performing a super chaos control was just too taxing for him. At least he gets to die a fulfilling death after he avenged Maria and saved humanity. It's a great way to close off his character arc as well as the rivalry between Sonic and Shadow, going from hating each other's guts to gaining mutual respect to putting their differences aside and saving the world. It's such a memorable moment because it's the end of not only this great and iconic rivalry, but the great and iconic character of Shadow the Hedgehog. He's always been one of my favorite characters in the series, and I love his arc in this game. After the fight is over, humanity is at peace once again, and that one little girl with a creepy expression everyone points out is happy again. Sonic returns to the arc to deliver the bad news about Shadow's fate as the credits begin to roll. After everything is done, we just get a moment where we hear the characters talk. Sonic and Rouge think about Shadow's real purpose. Eggman grapples with the fact that his grandfather, whom he looked up to, wished to kill all of humanity all along, while Tails comforts him, while Rouge and Knuckles are able to have an actual conversation about what they're going to do next without pissing each other off. This is another iconic scene because it represents the end of the grand journey that has led them up to this moment, and it allows our characters to simply reflect with each other about everything that has occurred. To greatly help this scene, we have a somber piano melody playing while the credits roll, which sets the mood perfectly.
Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog.
And with that, we are brought to the end of Sonic Adventure 2, as well as this review. What else can I say? I love this game. This really is one of my favorite games ever, and this playthrough, as well as the production of this video, has really cemented the fact that I love this game and I will never stop loving it. I first played it at the age of 7, and I've loved it ever since then. While I have had a few times in the past where I doubted the game's quality based on others' opinions, in the end I can realize that this is a game that represents everything I want out of a Sonic game. Everything I want out of a game in one of my favorite franchises. At the time, Adventure 2 really was the culmination of the entire Sonic franchise, and it shows. This was the game that the series had been leading up to ever since it all began in 1991, and it really shows with a story more action-packed, serious, and competent as this one. Look, the story is not perfect, and I would not go as far as to say this is one of the best stories ever told in a video game. Some things don't make too much sense when you really start thinking about it, and sometimes they don't fill in all the blanks they need to. While most of these can be solved via discussion and paying attention to the details, I can acknowledge these are minor issues with the story that could have been fixed. But overall, I still love it for its dire world-ending stakes that are not too serious for a Sonic game, great character development and interactions that are shown with the new rivals that test old characters in new ways, all the expansion of the Sonic lore, and competent presentation that is leagues above its predecessor. It also fixes other things from SA1's story, like the more streamlined structure, and how all campaigns are of equal importance. I think a lot of reoccurring Sonic characters are at their best in this game, like Eggman, Tails, Shadow, and of course, Sonic. This really was the game that made me realize that video games are capable of telling engaging narratives, and I will never forget that. Without a doubt, this is the best story ever told in a Sonic game. But oh man, the gameplay is just so damn good and replayable. Yeah, this is easily the most replayable Sonic game ever, and I love all three gameplay styles and can say they are an upgrade from their SA1 counterparts. While I miss some things from the SA1 Sonic stages like the overpowered spin dash, I can look past that and acknowledge how I think all 10 of these stages are super damn fun to replay. And while I would not call the other two gameplay styles near perfection like the speed stages, I really get a kick out of treasure hunting and mech shooting due to really solid mechanics, level design, and great replayability. I love how this time, SA2 treats all the gameplay styles of equal importance, so we didn't have to settle with the amazing Sonic levels and a bunch of other gameplay styles that aren't fleshed out nearly enough. These often get a lot of hate because of relatively small issues that are just blown out of proportion for the sake of making a point or whatever. And to tie this all together is a soundtrack that firmly sits as not only one of my favorite Sonic soundtracks, but one of my favorite video game soundtracks ever. Just like Adventure 1, this is another divisive game because even Sonic fans can be very critical of this one, so opinions are really all over the place. You can think whatever you want, but even when I put my nostalgia aside, I still see a great, no, masterpiece of a game in which I love every aspect of it. This right here represents everything I love to see in a Sonic the Hedgehog game, and I can say with confidence this is better than Sonic 3, my previous favorite, and is one of my favorite games of all time. See you later.